Hello, hello. Welcome to cEDH Budget Brews. I'm Tim.
And I'm Brandon.
How you doing tonight, Brandon?
I'm doing great, Tim. How are you?
Good, good, good. Glad to hear that, man. Glad to hear that. So, tonight I wanted to go over kind of this is something I've been kind of kicking around in the background with. I haven't like entirely. I wanted to talk about it with you to maybe flesh it out a little bit better. But
hmm
basically, what I wanted to talk about was the difference between optimization and streamlining.
Okay.
So, just to kind of give you a baseline, the Webster's Dictionary defines optimization as making the best or most effective use of a situation, opportunity, or resource.
hmm
Okay? And then streamlining is design or provide with a form that presents very little resistance to flow of air, water, increasing speed or ease of movement or mechanics. Number two is make an organization or system more efficient, effective by employing faster, simpler working methods. Okay. So the reason why that's kind of important is that the way I view streamlining is you take a existing system and you refine it to make it better, but you don't necessarily, but you stay within that system. Okay.
Right.
Whereas when you optimization means that you will always go with whatever the best is. Another
Okay.
kind of lay example is, let's say you're running a shipping company and you have a
hmm
fleet of trucks, okay? And you do over the road shipping with trucks. Like that is what you do. If you were to streamline your process, you would make improvements to make that as best as it can. Whereas if for some reason you discovered that, hey, I could ship all the same materials to all the same locations via rail system for 1/10 the cost, it would be more optimal to do that. But at the same
Right.
time, you would cease to be a trucking company. You would now probably be a rail shipping company, right?
hmm
So the streamlining of that process would ignore that rail system, even if it was that much more effective, to stick with the infrastructure that they have in place, but just to make marginal improvements. Whereas if you wanted to optimize, you would get rid of your fleet of trucks, lay everybody off, go with the rail system. So the
hmm
way that applies to kind of cEDH and deck building and cEDH philosophy is that cEDH plays a very high emphasis on optimization. It doesn't mean we don't brew, doesn't mean we don't explore and try things out. But what it does mean is that you have to very rigorously, earnestly, honestly assess a strategy, a card, a deck, and see
Yeah.
if what it is optimal. Okay? So this is kind of a very common scenario I get with people kind of coming in as budget brews. So in my first kind of example is I had a player come in and they wanted to brew a cEDH Lazolda deck. All right. So Lazolda, for those of you who don't know, is Rakdos Commander. It's 1 black, 1 red, 1 colorless. So 3/1. Has an activated ability of pay 2, sacrifice a creature. Lazolda the Blood Witch deals 2 damage to target creature or player if the sacrificed creature was red. Draw a card if the sacrificed creature was black. So if you sack a black and red creature, you draw a card, deal 2 damage to target creature or player. I believe it's been Oracle text to say any target, not that it matters, but you have to pay 2 into it, and you have to sacrifice a creature. It's a little slot intensive, it's a little mana intensive, it's a little card intensive, okay? What that player wanted to do was kind of build like a World Gorger Dragon deck, where you use World Gorger Dragon to kind of very quickly make a bunch of mana. You have Breach and you have Gnaws and Dockside and all of those things as well to go with it. So that way you can assemble an infinite mana and then play Lazolda and then do the Saki, do the thing, right? So once we kind of got looking at the deck, I just kept why don't you just play Kroxa? Kroxa obviously has a better ability because you play him early and now he's hand attack. So he makes your opponents discard something, and you just put him in the graveyard, and then now you don't need a third piece to win. Because in order to win with Lazolda, you kind of need the mana, and then you need to sack. You can sack Lazolda, but Crooks' ability just happens when it comes into play. It's not activated, doesn't require any additional mana. So it kind of goes off on, and then also just on its own, when it comes in, like, it's just more optimal for that strategy. What we did was we kind of sat down and we kind of compared all of the different Rakdos decks, compared it to kind of what we had ideas for Lazolda, and the result was the player kind of wound up going with Croxa, essentially, once we kind of looked at everything. But the problem was that when the player came in looking, they wanted to make a cEDH Lazolda deck. When you say the words cEDH and make and deck all in the same sentence, everybody starts thinking optimization. They don't think streamlining. Whereas if that gentleman would have said, hey, I want to streamline a Lazolda deck to make it as powerful as possible, that would have been a slightly different story. You know what I'm saying? I had another situation happen, very similar, where I had somebody want to brew a Gretchen Titchwillow deck. Kind of again, I was like, why don't you just play Thracios, dude? I mean, she's got some advantages where she actually allows you to play a land if you draw one, which is nice. She does have an 0/4 body, which blocks more things than Thracios does, because Thracios is a 1/3. But again, she doesn't actually kill it. She just blocks it. But the downside is that her mana ability requires blue and a green to activate, which I don't know if you've ever played Tasigur versus playing Thracios. Those colored pips make a difference. They really do. Also, Thracios, you see more cards with him, and he can act as ramp or card draw, not just sheer card draw. Because you scry, and then you either draw the card or put the land in a play. Whereas Gretchen just blind draws, and then you can put a land in a play. So again, we kind of went through that same process. We looked at Kinnan, we looked at Miramore, Vig, we looked at Rashmi, we looked at all the other ones. We looked at Kydel and Thracios, which is like, again, that's the other thing with Thracios, is Thracios has partners, so you can just kind of put it with whatever you want. That, you know, to kind of help shore up those things. And the deck we kind of settled on was Freed from the Rail and Scepter and kind of all those things, because they're like, no, I want to streamline Gretchen. And I was like, okay, that's cool. We can do it. But again, like, they played the deck 2 times and literally swapped it to Thracios. I guess where I'm kind of going with this is that, and this is probably something that you and I, as like deck helpers, kind of experience more than most. But I know in a lot of deck-specific Discords, I know when a lot of people try to get into cEDH, they're coming in from other formats, like casual, or they either are from other power levels or other formats. They kind of, everybody wants to do their own thing. And like, we get that. I get that. At the same time, not having that, not having the vernacular to like really ask accurately what you're requesting, and us not having accurate vernacular to say, hey, are you asking this or that? Because it's 2 different conversations. And I think if this type of verbiage gets into our vernacular, we can like kind of just ease the process of people getting into cEDH, ease the interaction between people playing like high power and whatnot. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, there's also things that people don't really take into consideration when upgrading their decks or streamlining versus optimization, and that's lowering the curve, right? This is something that we talked about before, and that it's like playing a Cultivate versus playing an Elvish Mystic. Yeah, Cultivate gets you 2 lands, but you're not going to get the full benefit until next turn. Whereas you could play, for the same price, you could play 3 Dorks or 3 1-drop artifacts, things like that. And
or
that's something. Go ahead.
Or even like a Nature's Lore. which
It's all
comes
something that like it you want to be when you're asking us for help. Typically, we want to help you be faster, and yeah, it's going to sacrifice some of the cards that you like, such as Cultivate, Kodama's Reach, and things like that. But overall, at least the way I personally help people, I typically help people streamline their deck more, so they're
Mhm.
still going to be able to play their goofy, fun stuff. It's just going to be faster. Can I help you?
Right. Well, and that's kind of the thing. Like that's the whole point. Like, so I was doing that upgrade project where I took like the precon and then like I pulled all the tap lands and essentially I wound up turning it into a ultra budget cEDH deck. Well, the first one I made Catilda out of, and then the second one was Coal. But that whole process was essentially like, let's get rid of all these tapped lands. Let's get rid of all these 3-mana rocks. Let's add some fast mana that we can use. And let's kind of focus let's focus that process. I made a variant where I actually just made a Voltron build of the Arm for Battle precon. I kind of did the same process, but kind of kept it on theme with it being a Voltron deck versus it like an equipment based deck with Wayleth at the helm versus just kind of literally gutting it slowly over time. But I did that process because I thought it would wind up making a better deck long term.
Mm-hmm.
But like that's the thing though, it is any deck can be streamlined.
Mm-hmm.
I just think that a lot of times players are coming in wanting to optimize, and cEDH players want to optimize. Like that's you give me any idea, I'm gonna break it, but then I'm also gonna be like, well, we can break it better if we do this. And that's how that why don't you just play this? Why don't you just play this? Why don't you just play this happens? And I think that if we can be like, oh, this guy is not this person, not guy, not everybody's a male. If this person isn't really wanting to have their deck optimized, they want to streamline their deck. And then we can shift gears and have a different conversation, and it can be much more productive for both parties involved. One, we now haven't like essentially insulted somebody, and two, a new person hasn't kind of broken.
They don't feel attacked.
Well, one, they don't feel attacked, but two, they haven't broken common etiquette in cEDH circles. Because that's the thing. Like, really, at the end of the day, what's happening is what one person is asking is against the normal etiquette. They just don't know it, and there's no way to explain it to them because in their head, they're not breaking etiquette, but they've gone from one social group to another. And it's very much akin to when I sit down at a table and I play like a fast, non-interactive combo deck against like some marginally upgraded precons. And I have built my deck intentionally to like fly under them. In fact, the last time I went to the shop, I was playing with these 3 kids that I know. They're like, I think they're in high school or something. And their decks are pretty casual. And the lowest thing I had was my Cole precon, my Cole deck. And I was like, let me just play one of your decks. They're like, why do you want to play one of our decks? Like, your deck like stops us. I'm like, yeah, but it's not like it's not until your decks are more refined. I'll just play yours because I can play your. I'm mostly just sitting here like I can goldfish at home.
Curb stomping. Yeah.
Like I can goldfish at home if I want. Like that's not what I'm here for.
It's like one time I went to my LGS, and this dude had brought a Gitrog deck, which immediately I already knew. I was like, that's probably got the combo in it. So I asked to look at it because he was going to play with us, and we were a casual for like it was a table of casuals essentially.
Like super casual.
I was playing. Yeah, I was playing a $35 Golos deck, if that gives you any idea. And I was still like the, what's it called, Nicol Bolas of the group at this point. And so I was looking through it and I saw all of the stuff in it and I was like, okay, maybe we shouldn't play with this. And he got mad because he thought I was trying to say that like his deck wasn't good enough. But I was like, no, it's too good.
It's the other way.
Yeah, like it's too good. I could play with you because I had my Najila deck at the time. But I was like, but they won't be able to play with you because they don't have that. One of the guys that I was sitting with asked us, well, like, how do we get to that level? Like, how do we get to y'all to where it's higher? And that's when I showed him the Discord and everything, and I explained it to him, and he was like, oh, so I just have to play what I don't like. And I was like, no, you don't have to do that.
No. Right. Well, and a lot of times, like, especially with Streamlining, it's not a matter of playing what you don't like. It's a matter of taking that 4-mana spell and just finding a 2-mana version of it.
Yeah.
That does the same thing. It's like the difference between playing Return to Dust and Disenchant. Are you really that married to Return to Dust?
It's something that I've had to explain to a lot of my Magic friends. Having a 5-mana value spell versus a 1-mana value spell that does something a little bit less.
Right.
I would go with that 1-mana value spell every day because I could do that 5 times.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And that's something that, it really took a lot of beating over the head for them to get.
Yeah. Well, and I basically I sat down with the kids and they kind of were the same way. They were like, well, we want to play with we want to play with a lot of with these cards. I'm like, I'm not saying don't. All I told them to do was like take out all the lands that come into play tapped, and get rid of all this 3 and up CMC ramp and just replace them with 2 CMC ramp or less.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, play a Dork, play a Talisman, play a Signet, play Fellware Stone, Mind Stone, like all of those things. Play Nature's Lore, 3 Visits, like those kind of things. Like that aren't super expensive, but just don't play it was the 4-mana. It was a 4-mana sorcery that got a land, and then each opponent could get a land, but then for each opponent who got a land, Template Discovery, right?
Yes.
Don't play Template Discovery, but I like getting 4 lands. I'm like, but you're not. Yeah. You're paying 4 mana and you're getting 1. And then if your opponents are suckers, then you're getting 4. And they're all like coming in and play tapped anyway. You don't get to use them. So you're playing a land that's tapped. Like it was like 30% of his mana base was ETB tapped lands. Mm-hmm. I'm like, so 1 out of every 3 turns, you have a land that's going to come into play tapped from what's available in your deck. Mm-hmm. So that means 1 out of every 3 turns, you're not going to be able to cast something on Carve. All right. And then all your ramp is 3 mana and above. You're not even casting your first ramp spell till turn 4, unless you're cutting yourself off of interaction turn 1, 2, or 3, which is how fast decks like I have get underneath you. And then you're not even like tapping, like you're not even untapping till turn 5 to do anything significant. And if somebody can play something fast, and you can build fast combo decks pretty cheap, especially if you know your opponents are just going to be tapping out and not doing anything till turn 5.
I think the perfect example of what I was saying earlier is like the spell that does more but costs more versus a spell that does less but costs less. Sublime Epiphany versus any one mana counter, 1 or 2 mana counter. Like right. Sublime Epiphany versus counter spell. So Sublime Epiphany does more, but you're not going to be able to play it until turn 6 or counter spell on turn 1 or 2.
Or, I mean, shit, even playing cancel and not playing counterspell. I think we did a thing a little while back where I pulled up every 3 mana, 3 blue 1 counterspell, and I found 16 of them that have the exact text of counter target spell, and then they did something else. It was like 15 or 16 counter spells that were the same mana, countered anything, and had upside over cancel.
Yeah, I remember you saying specifically, these are 3 mana counter spells I would play over cancel. Yeah. And I was losing my mind.
Right. And half of them, and half of the effects were like cost reductions. There was like Wizard's Retort was one of them. So this is a good example of streamlining. Like playing cancel versus playing Wizard's Retort. Okay. Wizard's Retort has a 1 colorless cost reduction if you control a wizard. And a lot of times if you're playing blue, you're going to be playing... Wizards are a pretty common type, like Thracios, for example.
Niv
Mizzet. Like, there's lots of wizards, not just the uber broken ones. I don't recall what some of the other ones were off the top of my head. There was another one that, like, it drew you a card. There was, like, 2 or 3 that just exiled the spell you countered. You know, there was Disallow, which counters a triggered ability, or spell. You know, and playing those things over cancel, and a lot of those were still the same price. But that's what streamlining is. Optimization is, why the fuck you playing a 3-mana counter spell? Why aren't you playing Force of Will? Which is a little more jarring, but depending on what you're looking to do, like if you're looking to play Tournament Commander at a budgetless table or at a table where people are proxying, you can't play 3 CMC counter magic that. Realistically, there's some corner cases, but
if something costs 3 mana value, it better be fucking good. You know what I mean? Like Trinisphere, or affect the board in some way.
Yeah, Force of Negation is 3 mana.
Yeah,
but I mean, like even if you're just playing Dissipate over Cancel, like that's a far improvement. But to be honest, I would probably play like Delay, Mana Leak, and some other. I would play a bunch of 2 and 1 mana interaction before I start playing 3 mana interaction anyway. But that's beside the point. But the big thing I just wanted to kind of get out there into the ethos is that maybe new players thinking about coming into cEDH aren't really looking to actually optimize. They're looking to streamline. And like that's fine. Like if you want to go play with your buddies and they're starting to power up, maybe some of them are getting into cEDH. Not everybody is. Maybe you're on a limited budget. You just want to make your deck better to kind of keep playing with your friends. That's totally different than like going to the subreddit with a non-cEDH deck.
It's okay to play high power as well, because high power is essentially cEDH, but for casuals. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and I don't
it's
mean
just
that in a bad way, but you know,
all high power is just cEDH with yourself, like with your same self-imposed rules on them, which is fine. And honestly, even cEDH has got a lot of wild stuff.
Yeah,
I mean, you go look at the database, you go look at our website. There's some stuff you're like, really? Yeah. Well, that's because there is a lot of bleed over. But the difference is when you are playing in your play group and with your friends at home or at your shop or whatever, that's your play group. Not when you go and you play on these like online metas or go play at like a GP at a tournament or something. I'm not saying you can't show up with this stuff. I'm just saying I feel that it would be disingenuous on my part and on the part of all of the deck helpers encouraged it. Like, it's not that it can't be done. It's just, I think you'll find, and most people who have listened to me have found that it's suboptimal to what was suggested. And once they switched, they were like, okay.
I think what matters is that people need to understand what they want first before they come to us and ask about it. Because,
well, just ask
like
anywhere online.
Earlier. Yeah. Well, like you were saying earlier, someone will come up to you and be like, hey, I want a Gretchen deck, but I want it cEDH. It's like, okay, do you actually want it cEDH, or do you just want a really good Gretchen deck? Because those two things matter. Because if you want an actual cEDH deck, go with Thracios and one of his girlfriends or something. Right. Don't go with Gretchen. I don't want to, how do I say this? I don't want more people to think I'm insulting them just because I'm saying, hey, if you want cEDH, you want to play optimally. Right. And they're like, no, I want this. It's like, well, then you don't want cEDH, you want high power, and that's okay. You just need to know.
Yeah, that's the other thing that I don't see how, I don't know if it's people's pride or what, but I don't get how like playing other power levels is like kind of talked down upon, because it's not a bad thing to play a 5 or a 4 or a 6. Those aren't bad things to play.
I think it's because people want the idea of playing the best. But the thing is that if you don't want the best, then that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. It's what's the name of that YouTube channel? I think it's like Casually Competitive, I think is their name. One of my favorites. They have wonderful, wonderful gameplay videos. And they admit they are high power. They are not cEDH, and that's
Right.
okay.
Which is fine. Well, and not only that, like just like when you're shooting the moon, you have very narrow margins,
Mm-hmm.
and that pushes a lot of stuff out. And I don't think people realize how much stuff gets pushed out. The power level of cEDH is a power level. It's not a format. I don't care what anybody says. I think there's other people with that same idea as well. But when you're playing at that power level, like it pushes a lot of things out, but it is broader than when we kind of pretend it is. It's just there needs to be something that is more like when you want to pick up a strategy or play a strategy, it just needs to kind of come from the angle of, is it attacking a meta in a way that's more optimal than other strategies in those colors or in those kind of in that wheelhouse, or does it kind of fit some niche?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like one of the obvious things I can think of that would make Gretchen kind of optimal to play over Thracios is if for some reason your meta is chocked full of X3 board wipes. Like,
Mm-hmm.
like just that's all anybody does. They're like, fuck Drannith. And so having an X4 might be better. Yeah. And that's just kind of something I thought of off the top of my head here on the fly. Like it's a pretty thinly veiled excuse at best anyway, but that's just something I could think of.
Yeah. Well, it's like also like that one time we played with Flower and she fucking curb stomped us with Damia and I wasn't expecting it.
Right.
It's like Damia is not a commander I would have considered cEDH, but it does fit in a way that's different than other decks in those colors. And I think that was good. And it was really, it was fun to lose to, I'm not going to lie.
Right. And that's not that you can't do powerful stuff, because you can.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's kind of the thing is that you can do powerful things and they don't have to be cEDH. And one, that's okay. Two, that might be actually what you want. And asking for that help, especially with us, is fine, because that's kind of what we're for, is we're kind of to help bridge that gap between the two kind of cultures in a respectful manner, at least as to the best of my ability. I do kind of have a mouth like a cannon sometimes. I just feel that like if we can kind of get that out there and get it just kind of, I don't know. I think I'm talking in circles now.
I think it's important for people to know what they're asking first. And
it is.
That's what this video is for. That's what we're for. One of the biggest things about deck helpers is not just helping with decks. It's helping, new and casual players who are wanting to get into it understand.
Or power up. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, or power up, yeah. Understand the culture, understand what's expected of them and others, and the how to interact with people. I think those are three things that I wasn't prepared for when I became a deck helper, but that's something that I think is really, really important to portray, is that we're not just there to help with your deck, we're there to help you as well.
Right, and just kind of help get people, because even if you're playing in an environment where other people are playing cEDH decks and you're not, and you guys are cool with that, you just need to keep up, there's a lot you could do to make your deck perform better. And that's what streamlining is for.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't have to be just jam it full of a bunch of $1 million cards. Sometimes it's just as simple as stop playing cancel and play dissipate, or stop playing cancel and play counterspell.
Mm-hmm.
Or play resculpt over, I don't know, some 4 mana bounce spell that bounces everything but octopuses, because you ain't on any octopuses.
I mean, it's even something as simple as play a mana dork over cultivate.
Yep, play a mana dork over cultivate. Get all the ETB tap lands out of your deck, unless they're doing some kind of other ancillary thing, like produce more mana next turn, increase synergies like with snow or metalcraft or things like that, and make sure you're limited in it. Like don't play tap lands, people. Please don't. Like, just play basics. I don't know, man. I think that probably about wraps it up for this. Unless you got something else you wanted to throw in.
Nope, I've said my part.
Thanks again for joining us. If you like what you hear, like what you see, please hit the subscribe, hit the like, get the notifications. If you got any questions or comments, please leave them in, leave them below. And everybody, thanks again and have a good night.
Bye.
Bye.